So my mother-in-law is trying to kick me out of her house because I gave birth to her son's kid, and well, apparently the baby didn't come out wide enough, and she's blaming me, saying that I cheated. In my husband's family, they all act high and mighty, talking about their fancy ancestry like it's some big deal. A gazillion years ago, some relative of theirs hit the jackpot, and now they're swimming in cash and land. But you know what comes with all that money? Greed, entitlement, and this unbearable attitude of being better than everybody else. Seriously, there's not a single person in that family, except maybe my sister-in-law, who does not think that they're above the rest of us. It's like they're living in a bubble of their own arrogance and no one can pop it. This is just the messed up reality we deal with whenever I'm around them. Just plain everyday snobbery. I'm here talking to you all because my life has hit rock bottom. My in-laws have turned into a nightmare, and you know what is even worse? My own husband's not backing me up. It's just me and my little one fighting this battle all alone. And on top of all this, there's this blatant racism, making everything even more unbearable. So buckle up because I'm about to spill the beans on this messed up family. They have everything they could ever want, but they're so scared of losing their power that they're willing to crush anybody in their way. Unfortunately, this time it's me and my baby. And after doing all of that to us, they want us back. When I, female 27, met Nelson, 31 male, it was not exactly love at first sight. He had this obnoxious, stuck-up vibe that irritated me to no end. Born into wealth, he acted like the world owed him something, and there were warning signs all over him, red flags. Plus, he could not muster the courage to stand up to his parents even if his life depended on it. Except that one time. Some might find that endearing, but trust me, it's a one-way ticket to a doomed future. Let me explain why I think that. Despite all these red flags, there was something oddly magnetic about Nelson. Maybe some of you can relate to being drawn to that wrong kind of people. It's not like my own family was struggling, but there was this inexplicable allure about him. And well, against my better judgment, I said yes when he proposed. Crazy, right? But sometimes logic takes a back seat when your heart's involved. I now feel sorry for myself. What happened next was nothing short of a nightmare. As I mentioned, Nelson's family thought that they had some noble blood coursing through their veins, elevating them from far above the common folk. It's no surprise that their way of life was poles apart from how regular people like you and me go about things. But hey, you can kind of expect that when you have to get your basic survival needs more than met. They've got all the time in the world to work in their snobbery. For years, he shielded me from his family, always having a convenient excuse ready to avoid any encounters. My initial hunch was that there was a deep well of racism lurking there, and sadly, that gut feeling hit the mark. Their prejudice was not just some harmless quirk, it actively steered their decisions. And then came the day I met this family, and let me tell you, the snide remarks and the spiteful comments about my race and culture just did not stop. I had to dig deep to keep my composure. Every cheesy jab and hateful comment felt like a punch to the gut. It took all my strength not to explode right then and there during our first encounter. That's when I finally understood why Nelson had kept me away from so long from them. Another gathering was set up in some fancy area. I tried my best to make a good impression, but there was this glaring off vibe, according to them. Can you guess what it was? You got it, my skin color. As if they've not already made enough remarks about it during our first meeting. I can still recall the way Nelson's mom, Regina, looked at my skin. Her disgust was palpable, and the entire family was bollocks from the very start, but for whatever reason, I still wanted to marry Nelson. In the third meeting, both Nelson's mom and dad, Jefferson, had a proper blow-up. It was when Nelson announced that he wanted to marry me. We had been dating for 3 years by then. His parents' major concern was that I was not a white person, and the second one was because I did not belong to a noble family as they did, and there were enough chances that I would be a cheat. But surprisingly, and for the only time, Nelson took a stand for himself and informed them if they did not accept his love and his marriage, Then he would leave the family, and then they could look for heirs all they wanted. His parents shriveled up, and they agreed, and we married. The wedding was grand, and we even appeared in the local newspaper, and according to my sister-in-law Pam, we should have made bigger headlines, but guess what? Because my in-laws were embarrassed by me, they did not want to display it to the world whom their youngest son had married. But I didn't give a single damn. I'd married Nelson not to make it to the headlines, but because I wanted to. But did the following months bring any peace? Well, you've already guessed it, they were far from peaceful. The source of the turmoil, mostly it was my in-laws. They made it abundantly clear that they didn't like me, and they were determined to remind me of that fact every single day. Whether it was messing with my clothes, my hair, my food, their antics were often as juvenile as they came. But they achieved their goal. I got the message loud and clear. I used to confide in Nelson about all this, and at first, he was understanding and helped me navigate his parents' quote shenanigans. However, as time passed and our honeymoon phase ended, something in him changed. I believe it was due to his parents' constant nagging and their knack for planting ideas in his head, but before long, I felt completely isolated within that family. Sometimes I would interact with Pam, my sister-in-law, but she had her own life to deal with and could not intervene much in mine. After our marriage hit the 5-month mark, Pam and Jefferson wasted no time in pushing for an heir. At first they dropped hints, but soon enough they started pestering Nelson about it. By then, Nelson had begun distancing himself from me, so his words were nothing short of rude and hurtful. Nevertheless, we tried for a baby, and we were blessed with a beautiful baby. As delighted as my sister-in-law and I were with our baby, well, my in-laws and Nelson could not resist making some downright mean comments. About him. And you've probably guessed it correctly, their first remark was about his complexion. Regina took it a step further and questioned if the baby was even Nelson's. Now, anybody who understands basic genetics knows that when you marry someone from a different race, your child will inherit a mix of traits. Our little one could not have been purely white, just as he could not have been entirely brown. But none of these scientific facts mattered for my in-laws. Their only gripe was that the baby was not white, and that, in their eyes, was enough to make our lives absolutely miserable. And so that's exactly what happened. In the months that followed, they harassed me relentlessly. The accusations of being a cheater became so frequent that even Nelson began to believe their toxic lies. He embraced their accusations, using them as a weapon against me. Worse yet, there were times when Nelson would leave our baby unattended, forcing me to constantly be vigilant to ensure our child's safety. The situation had become unbearable, and I started questioning if marrying Nelson was the biggest mistake of my life. As if to confirm my worst fears, one morning, I woke up to find all my belongings removed from our shared bedroom. I searched the entire house for my things, but no one in the family was willing to discuss it. When I entered the living room, I discovered my possessions, neatly packed in 3 separate suitcases. Now, to them sat a gift hamper. I could not help but notice a substantial amount of cash tucked inside. When I questioned one of the houseworkers about the situation, they informed me that the Nelsons had instructed them to remove my belongings and pack them in a suitcase. So I called Nelson repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Meanwhile, my in-laws seemed to be relishing the chaos, treating it as their personal entertainment. I then asked the same housekeeper if Nelson had given any reason for this, and she hesitated before telling me that he had conveyed a message through her. The message was cutting and painful, and I'll tell you right now, and I quote, "Tell that cheater of a woman to take her crap and get out of my house." I was shocked and hurt that I resolved not to leave until I had an explanation from him. But when I attempted to sit down, Regina abruptly swooped in and forcefully removed all my belongings from the house. Well, she demanded that I took my child and leave before she called the police on me. I didn't have the strength to fight back, so I left with the baby. I told them I would send them divorce papers, but they never responded. Fueled by anger, I vowed to never return, swearing that they would never lay eyes on my son again. That determination lasted only a few months. 3 weeks ago, Regina urgently called, begging me to visit for just a little chat. I declined, and since then her calls have not stopped. In a recent message, she claims they now accept my son as their rightful heir and want him back. But I cannot shake the feeling that something fishy is going on. I sense there's a hidden agenda, and I need suggestions in case things escalate. Legally, they have not harmed me, so pressing charges seem impossible. What else can I do to protect myself and my son? And if you're wondering, no, Nelson has not contacted me at all. No calls, no messages. Top comments from the original post. Life is unfair. You want to push someone behind bars, and there simply aren't enough reasons to do that. Let me ask you, baby, did they ever physically harm you? Since they're rich and our country is, not crap at dealing with rich people, I guess the only sensible thing to do is to keep your distance. Don't go to no meetings with them. I assume they have contacted you months or years after the incident, so you can never know what they want, and you better be careful, there's a child here. Comment 2. I am not trying to sound racist, but why did you even marry into a family that doesn't want any other race or mixed children in their lives? I don't know, it just doesn't make sense for you to put yourself through the drama, and to be honest, I feel like you're the one in the wrong here, for trying to ruin their, quote, image of a perfect family. Update number 1. Alright, for those of you who thought something suspicious was afoot, you're absolutely correct. I have come to realize why they wanted me back after visiting their house and receiving confirmation from Pam. But do not get your hopes up. Fairy tale enthusiast, because it has nothing to do with redemption or feeling of shame. It's all about the chaotic mess life has thrown their way, and this mess is so intense that even their wealth cannot untangle it. Let me take you through the roller coaster of the past few weeks. Against my best judgment, I decided to give them a visit soon after I posted the last post. It was mostly because my in-laws said that if I did not come to meet them, they would come to me. And I, at any cost, do not want them near my baby. So I went there, and they gave me a hearty welcome. And when I demanded to know what they wanted from me, they asked me to freshen up first. It basically meant eating all they had laid out in front of me, but I was tired of them going around in their own little circles, and I told them that if they did not tell me immediately, I would just turn around and leave. It was then that they brought me to Nelson's room, and what I saw shocked me. When I walked into Nelson's room, I was met with a shocking sight. He lay on his bed, his once robust frame looking frail and battered as if he had been through a catastrophic accident. He had. And when I asked what happened, Regina, with tears in her eyes, began to recount the story. She explained that just a few days before the first contact me, Nelson had been in a terrible accident. It left everything below his waist paralyzed, and he now required assistance for even the most basic of tasks. I knew exactly where they were headed with this, but I kept my thoughts to myself and let them continue. I felt genuine sympathy for Nelson, but the pain he had caused me ran deep, and his current condition could not erase the hurt that he had inflicted on my baby and me. When I pressed them for an explanation about what they wanted from me, they told me that they wanted me to return to the house and take care of my husband and fulfill their desire for an heir. This request did not sit well with me at all, but they weren't done. They went on to claim that the reason they were not allowing any strangers near Nelson was the concern that someone might take advantage of his very vulnerable state and leave them to deal with the consequences. Did I have to interact in their reasons or their desires? No. I firmly conveyed my priorities, which visibly angered Regina and Jefferson. I made it clear that my primary concern was taking care of my baby and working to meet our financial needs. Their desperation led them to offer to pay me whatever I wanted each month, to even provide a separate room for my baby and me to stay in the house. But they attached one very significant condition. I have to keep this arrangement a secret to protect their image in society. Wow, what's wrong with them? I started shaking my head at them, and when their request started getting insulting, I left. They shouted behind me that they would definitely hit me up again in case I changed my mind. Forget about them. I was not going to do any of that. For nearly a week, they bombarded me with phone calls. Their desperation grew more palpable, but as the days passed, their calls became less frequent, and their demands took a completely unexpected turn. They now wanted something entirely different, a divorce. A few weeks later, Pam reached out to me. It was she who revealed the truth. The reason Nelson's parents were so desperate to have me meet at their place was not just his current condition, but something more alarming. Nelson was dealing with varicocele, Klinefelter syndrome, or a similar condition. Neither Pam or I were entirely sure of the specifics. However, what we did know was that he was becoming infertile and time was running out for him to have another baby. His current state only complicated matters, and they wanted me around him, not out of concern for his well-being, but because they feared somebody might leak this information and absolutely tarnish their reputation. For a while, their only solution was to seek my help. However, as per Pam, they found another option, a white girl willing to marry Nelson. She might not have a noble background, but she hails from a wealthy businessman's family, and that seems to be sufficient for them. Well, because she's a willing partner and a white woman, Nelson's parents are pushing me to officially exit their lives and make way for this new wife for Nelson. Hence the reason why they want to divorce after all of this while. I was utterly overwhelmed with all this information, but Pam advised me not to grant Nelson a divorce under any circumstances. She assured me that despite sharing the same family, she despised their behavior. She was appalled at how they treated me, and for her, this was a way to strike back. It was not just my revenge, it was hers too, for whatever other reason she had. They're planning a party in 2 weeks to introduce their new son's partner to the world, and now I'm determined to ensure that the party is a resounding success. It's time to take a stand and show them that I will not be pushed around anymore. Update number 2. Indeed, I took the plunge. You cannot just stroll into a wealthy person's party uninvited, so Pam kindly provided me with 2 invitations, one for me and another for my son, even though his presence wasn't necessary. None of the other family members had a clue. They were too wrapped up in planning how to announce their son's new partner while evading questions about me. I discreetly settled into a seat in a quiet corner, and when Pam completed her social obligation, she joined me. In my hands, I held crucial documents, and together, we patiently waited for the opportune moment to act. This party boasted more influential guests than my own wedding, filled with rich strangers I had never seen before, but this was going to work to my advantage. The more high-profile individuals who knew about me and my baby, the better. When I inquired about Nelson, Pam informed me that he was observing everything from his room. She mentioned that even Nelson was becoming weary of his parents' obnoxious behavior. It seemed their attitude towards him had shifted, treating him more like an object than a person. I could not help but recall how I had warned Nelson about this a long time ago. Instead, he had tried to teach me not to create problems between his parents and him. Well, it seems that some people have to learn the hard way after all. Because of his condition, his parents had confined to him of his bedroom and only allowed him out of the house when it was late at night so that nobody could see him in his current state. Because nights' cool winds are more vicious, he got sick and lost a lot of weight. This is now directly reflecting on his current health. Then his parents started telling him how hard he made it all for them. If he had not married me, they said, they would not have lost so much time finding a better wife for him, and instead of my son, they would have gotten a perfectly white heir. Now, if what Pam has heard to be correct, they keep badgering him about his bad health and keep him away from any woman, housemaids included. Well, I genuinely felt sorry for him, to be honest with you. 100%, and I even wanted to see him, but I had different things on my mind, and matters more important than a rich boy's awakening. When Nelson's family raised their glasses, declaring their intention to announce something important, I could not hold back any longer. I stood up ready to thwart their plan, as they proudly proclaimed that they had found a suitable wife for Nelson, somebody who would supposedly bring good luck and a beautiful heir to the family. The guests cheered enthusiastically at her arrival, and I could not help but scoff. I knew that over half of those applauding probably preached about equality in the media, but in reality, they were facing two-faced monsters. I swear, the hypocrisy was staggering. They expressed their concerns about their heir now that Nelson was growing old, a comment I knew would have hurt him deeply, but instead of dwelling on his pain, I strode confidently to the center of the party floor and introduced myself. Regina and Jefferson looked utterly shocked. I informed the guests that I was, and still am, Nelson's first wife. I displayed our marriage papers and then proudly introduced my son to them. I stated unequivocally that, according to every law, my son was the legal heir to the family inheritance and he might not be white, but he was undeniably Nelson's child. I backed my claim with the relevant legal document, silencing the room with the truth. I was well aware that most of the attendees did not care about our situation, but I also sensed that some did. Judging by the expressions on Regina and Jefferson's face, it was evidence that I had seriously disrupted their plans. Recovering from this blow would not be easy, and they knew it too. I took the opportunity to inform the crowd of all the injustices Regina and Jefferson had inflicted upon me and my child. I warned my in-laws that from that moment on, I intended to involve the police officially in the matter. I did not care much about the outcome. I simply wanted the truth out in the open. Moreover, I made it clear that I would not divorce Nelson until my son was rightfully acknowledged as the heir. If they refused to comply with my demands, I vowed to ensure their family and their line would end with Nelson. My determination echoed through the room, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. They seemed to do the trick. Under the vile attention of so many people, they got humbled really quickly. The woman that they had introduced as Nelson's new partner left the party crying and sobbing as her parents trailed after her, their angry expressions fixed at Nelson's parents. Because I knew a lot of damage had been done, and whatever the result may be, I took my baby and left the party as well. They could hate me all they wanted, but I did not want to leave them unharmed in this entire issue that they created for no apparent reason. After that day, Pam told me her relationship with her parents had worsened as well. I feel sorry for her, but I'm also glad on her behalf. She has wanted to get out of their clutches for a long time now. This was her sign to date her girlfriend of 9 years openly. Update number 3. As I mentioned in my last post, our stunt at the party has strained Pam's relationship with her family, hasn't it? And aside from her, even Nelson is no longer in a position to demand anything suitable in the foreseeable future. This has plunged the so-called noble family into crisis, even though many acted as if they could not care less about what I was saying. The revolution about Nelson's current situation changed their perspectives. Now, most of them steer clear of the family, fearing that either Regina or Jefferson might approach them for their daughter's hand for their son. The tables have turned, and the once mighty family has found itself on shaky grounds. Because they were aware of Nelson's health condition, nobody wanted to take the risk. In essence, Nelson had no one left willing to marry him. With each passing day, he grew weaker, and his parents' neglect took on a toll of his own health. From the sporadic updates I received from Pam, it seemed likely that Nelson might not live much longer. The mere thought of his potentially shortened life, all because his parents succeeded in ruining his perspective on life, filled me with profound sadness. Despite what I did, the idea that he might not be around and live in the near future was deeply troubling. Who would have ever imagined that it would end up like this? In their desperation, Regina and Jefferson reached out to me and requested a meeting. I obliged and met with them. They made an astonishing announcement. Since they had no other choice, they wanted to declare my son as the official heir to all their property. Following Nelson's passing, he would hold legal rights over every asset owned by this particular family. While I had little personal interest in everything they promised, I saw this as the most direct way to make it clear that they had been defeated by the very person that they had shown no respect for. However, it seemed like this fact did not really matter much to them. They have accepted their defeat. A meeting to settle these matters is scheduled in 2 weeks' time, and meanwhile, I chose to visit Nelson. He appeared worse than ever, but he was still alive. He expressed his apologies for his past behavior, though he did not expect me to accept it. I told him I would not grant him a divorce until everything was rightfully transferred to my son. But he seemed indifferent. He was already at death's door, and divorce was the last of his concerns. I felt a bit of sympathy for him, to be honest. But the situation was what it was, and I did not press further. We have not met much after the conversation, despite everything. I'm grateful for the support and the non-racist comments that I've received. I honestly... Do you know what the most challenging part of sharing this entire story was? It was realizing that Regina and Jefferson were not the ones with such racist views. There's countless more people out there just like them, and honestly, God help this society. Top comments. Comment number 1. The fact that it all ended in your hands, despite looking like it'll never be the funniest ducking part of this entire fiasco, it makes me hopeful maybe I should look for a rich husband myself and end up with so much wealth. What's even more interesting is your husband. I really want to know what went through his mind as he went through all that crap. Is there a way you could convince your husband to write a post here? That would be awesome. I really think a lot of people here want to know what goes on in the minds of such dumb, rich idiots. It's been 2 days since you've posted, and I want to know if he's alive or dead. Let us know another update. Comment number 2. I'm so sorry for your in-laws. They did not deserve a daughter-in-law like you. Gosh, if it were me, I would have changed their lives for the better. Instead of doing what you did, you basically ruined century-old traditions they had just because you wanted to prove something. I hope you're happy. The fact that your stunt has nearly killed your husband, wow, you're amazing. A true inspiration. So this is just one of those stories where something happens that you simply did not see coming, and I think that was the accident that left, well, OP's significant other completely paralyzed from the waist down. Now, that was a shocking part of the story, but what was even more shocking than that was OP's significant other's parents were absolutely toxic, disastrous people, and the entire time, they were so against OP, so racist, so ridiculous, and I even added in some of the wildest comments that I could find that were coming up with some really attention-seeking behavior, and they got it. Lots of comment replies back. That very last comment I read to you, let me know your thoughts about it, guys. Drop it in the comment section down below. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, and you want more daily videos like this, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. Thank you for that, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.